Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Monday Night Show here on Borough Fan TV with me, James Hutchinson. We enter the final week of the football season, of what can be best described as a trying season, I think, Borough fans. Joining me tonight is Joe Scott to look back at the Reading and Cardiff games. Are you all right, Joe?
Yeah, not too bad, James.
Good stuff, good stuff. We've also got the final day showdown with Sheffield Wednesday to look forward to as well, Borough fans. So still plenty to talk about, plenty to look forward to, I think. We've also, later on the show, got the Mayor of Middlesbrough, Andy Preston, coming on. He's going to answer a few questions we throw his way, and hopefully he can find a positive ending to this season for us. As always, this show's nothing without you, Borough fans, so share your thoughts and opinions as we reach the conclusion to this season. So, Joe, we'll go back a week or so. It was Reading. And after the Stoke away game, there was a pre-match announcement before the game about a player leaving the club. This time it was Ryan Shotton. What was your reaction to that news, Joe?
Well, my initial thoughts were, I was a bit strange to see him not in the team after his, obviously, the impressive performance that he had against Millwall. But then, all of a sudden, I've heard, just like a couple of minutes after the lineup for the Reading game got announced, that they've announced that he's left the club. And I thought it was an absolute puzzle in my mind, to be honest. And then, come to think of it, there was a lot of mixed points around the Borough fans that, the way that he left. I know he was carrying an injury, I think, after the Bristol City game. And then Warnock tried to persuade him to stay, but Shotton had his own mind up saying, that he didn't want to aggravate the injury any further. And he's one of the ones that's out of contract at the end of this current season. So, in the end of the day, he just left it, which puzzles me, to be honest, James.
Yeah. I think it's fair enough, like you say there, Joe. His contract's up, and he was worried. He'd played that Bristol City game where apparently he wasn't 100%. He was struggling, and he dragged himself out of that game, and it maybe showed in his performance. But at the end of the day, at least he's stepped up and he's played a few games. Like I say, his performance at Millwall was notable, and he put in a good showing that day. So, he's one of any number of players, not just at our club, but at other clubs that are looking for contracts now, and it's not going to be easy for him anyway, and it certainly won't be if they're injured, will it?
Nah, like going on to the different players, like going on about like friends, and you could tell from that image from the game that just went by, he's one of the lads that just came up with his last game for the club, and the same with Morrison and Clayton as well, and which obviously we'll talk about later on.
Yeah,
I think they're the ones that definitely could have played their last games for the club, I think.
Yeah. Frankie Bam Boynton, thanks for getting in touch, mate. He's probably glad to see the back of Ryan Shotton. He said that Shotton and Rudy are two of the biggest donkeys at the club, so I don't think Frankie's too upset to see Ryan Shotton leave. But as I say, I think he made over 80 appearances for the Borough, so he made a contribution. Really. And like I say, in that Millwall game, he certainly helped us get the points that day. Just on another club there, Stephen Allen's been in touch. Evening, lads. Thoughts on Hull being at the bottom and pretty much relegated? I mean, that whole situation, you could probably talk about that for an hour about what's going on at that club, couldn't you, Joe? It's an absolute nightmare.
Yeah. It's an absolute nightmare there, considering, that the fans having problems with the owners for years, and the team's just been underperforming this season. I think, from a personal standpoint, I think points-wise, I think Hull and Barnsley are technically down, so it's just left between other clubs and obviously us included.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway, back to the Reading game last week. Neil Warnock made 4 changes to the side. He brought Ainsley Pears back in goal. Anthony Dyke-Steele came back in defence. And we went to a back 4. And despite a few concerns before the game about how that would work with George Friend and Dale Fry in the middle, it worked really well, didn't it?
It did for a period, yeah. And then, unfortunately, we got the bit of hard luck when the first goal came in. And then we went on well from there, but I think, considering the fact, we had obviously the formation back from the first few games, I mean, that could work. And obviously that worked, in there as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, another masterstroke I thought from Warnock last week was he brought Marcus Tavernier back in the side, and then he added a real zip to the performance. I think all too often there's plenty of effort there with Tav, but it's just the final ball, his decision making, a bit of composure that's lacking. But in the last 2 games, I think he's been our best player, hasn't he, Joe?
Yeah, both him and Roberts actually gave Fletcher the support that he did up front. Fair play to Tav. He did well the last couple of games, and I think him and Roberts, could work together, providing the strike and the service, and Fletcher seems to get the benefit of that at the moment. So, I think Tav and Roberts have done well, providing the 2 false number 9s.
And another thing that Neil Warnock mentioned in the after-game press conference that he had was that he brought Dijksteel in so it would free Johnny Howson up to play in midfield. Now, that's something, because he felt as though that's Howson's best position, which all too often he's not played in this season. So it shows then again that in a matter of weeks, Warnock spotted where players are best suited to being placed in the Borough team, isn't it, Joe?
Yeah, because I think, in my personal opinion anyway, I think Howson's more suited to being in that central midfield role and more attacking role than I would have preferred him to play a right wing back, to be truthful. And obviously it's such a shame, which we'll go on to later on, that we won't able to have that spark that we have him in, for the crucial game that we got on Wednesday.
Yeah. I know you mentioned there about Jed Spencer. He had a more of an attacking role as well, didn't he, against Reading? He was pushed further up the field. Do you think that's something we might see in the future? Should he stay at the club? Because I know there's been one or two transfer rumours whizzing around about Spence. What do you reckon about all that?
Yeah, I know he's been recognised, but heavily rumoured with a few Premier League clubs recently. And to think, he's playing that role well. To be honest, his last few games down to Jed Spence, considering, the nose break that he had against Millwall, I think he was better placed in that position. I'm not going to lie. Obviously, Howson is going to obviously have that role in there as well. But I think Spence proved, he can play at right wing back and he can play in a more forward role than he has been in recent months as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Steve Nichols, thanks for watching the show, Steve. Good point he's making here. Obviously, we won at Reading last week. We lost at home, which we'll talk about later on in the show, against Cardiff at the weekend. I don't think it's any coincidence, Joe, that we've come back 4 games. I know we haven't won since Boxing Day at home anyway, but I think those 4 games we've lost would have been somewhat different if fans had been in the stadium. And Steve's saying here, Raw in October when the fans are allowed back in. I think it's something that the Borough desperately need, don't they? They need the fans back in the Riverside, don't they?
Yeah, they do. I think they're missing that 12th man, so to speak. I wouldn't have imagined, being at the Riverside for the last remaining games that we've had, we would have been out the doors early. So, but at the same time as well, obviously we miss being at the games themselves, but obviously we can't do that at the moment because of the current circumstances at the minute. But it's worked well to us going away than it has been at home, to be honest. But like I said, if the pilots work well for the next coming months, and hopefully October time we'll be back at the Riverside. But I don't know about away games at the minute because obviously when the games are back in a minute, most fans will be able to go to away games anyway, just to prevent the spread from being happening. So if we can get back to at least home games, then we'll be glad to be back in there, hopefully by October time if things go well in this pandemic.
Yeah, I think you're right there about the away fan situation, because I think they're looking at possibly grounds having 30-40% capacity. I think most clubs, season ticket holders will take that up. If not, they'll be oversubscribed anyway. But as you say, I don't think they'll want fans travelling the length and breadth of the country going to away games of football. So I think you'll see the total opposite of what's happened now when there's been no fans in the ground and away teams have done well. I think when it goes to just home fans in the ground, I think you'll see home teams doing really well then. So it'd be interesting one to look out. But I think, just to get fans in the ground will be a bonus, mate. So, just back at that Reading game, obviously we had a bit of a rocky spell where we fell a goal behind, then John Swift hit the post. I think it might have been a different story if that had gone in.
Yeah, it would have been one of those where it was going to be hard to come back from. But luckily, Fletcher nodded in the goal just before half time, and luckily enough, we managed to get the winner in the end from Patrick Roberts. And I think that was the crucial win we needed in the run up going into the last couple of games. Obviously, it didn't work well the game afterwards, but I think the win at the Medeski was vital at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you said there about Ashley Fletcher, his goal there, that was his 13th of the season, which obviously it's his most since he came to the club, and this is his third season, but he's had a half-decent season for the Borough, hasn't he?
He has. Obviously, when we first bought him, he never got really a hard run in the team. He was eventually loaned out to Sunderland at one point towards the end of one of the seasons a couple of years ago. But once he come back in, obviously, I think he was one of the players that Tony Pulis worked wonders of bringing his true form to life. And obviously, Woodgate and obviously Warnock have picked up on it. So even if we do go down or stay in the league, I think keeping Fletcher is going to be a massive task to keep hold of him, once this season comes to an end.
Yeah, there's a few interesting comments here. You just mentioned Jonathan Woodgate and Neil Warnock and other things like that. So we've got two comments here I'd just like to flag up, Joe, and we'll have a chat about. We've got Craig Hutchinson on. He's saying Warnock has proven Woody wasn't all that bad. A number of his players are the problem and a big clear-out's required. And then I've got Duke McMillan who's saying here, contact Pearson immediately for pre-season. Only my opinion, but he would send us in a better direction. Obviously, got one more game to go. What's your gut feeling about where the club will go next in terms of its manager?
It's going to be tough to call. Obviously, my personal opinion, I think I would like Neil Warnock to stay for at least another 12 months. But there's obviously other managers have been linked with the job recently. I know the Wigan manager, Paul Cook, he's been heavily mentioned recently about him possibly coming to the Borough. But I think, obviously, with other managers have come and gone, we obviously know that Danny Cowley left Huddersfield this week. And obviously, like I said, Pearson left Watford. The only thing, about us bringing Pearson in is obviously, would he want to manage us in League One? That's obviously the big question mark that's overflowing that at the moment. But even if we do go down, I would do like this, have Warnock around for another 12 months.
Yeah,
I would personally feel. I said, with the Pearson situation, I think it will come down to money. And if you want to manage us in League One, that's the only thing I will have against Pearson coming here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems as though a lot of people are in agreement with you there, Joe, that they'd like Warnock to remain on. Like Matthew Groves, I saw his comment flash across there, and Steve Nichols, he believes that Warnock will stay on. To be honest, you saw with what you got with Cardiff at the weekend. We'll talk about that game in a bit. But he gets a template that works in the Championship largely. It's not maybe very pretty to watch, but it's effective. And I certainly don't think we'll be in the bottom 4 to 6 next season if he was still our manager. But that's just my opinion. One of the players who might be here next year or might not be, Patrick Roberts. He played a crucial part in that game at Reading last week. And as the game progressed, his influence grew. I think he's been a little bit frustrating for me at times, Roberts. You can see the potential's there, but again, a bit like Tav, the final ball, his decision-making lets him down. But that was definitely his most influential performance of the season, wasn't it, last week?
Yeah. Patrick Roberts, I think, some fans will probably criticise him being ball greedy at the best of times, but it's the sort of player that we need in the run-up to the last game of the seasons. His dribbling, his work ethic, is not afraid to get at defenders. I think if this game proves to be his last for the Borough, from his loan spell, it's difficult to say. I think if we do went down, I don't think he'll want to be in League One with us. He'd want to be either in the Championship or maybe higher up in that. So if we do keep Roberts, if we do stay up, I mean, obviously that'd be great, but I think obviously we'll keep him, and obviously the likes of Lucas Nemecha, he'll probably get loaned out somewhere else, I think.
Yeah. I mean, that goal he scored last week, arguably, that was the most important goal that's been scored for the club, probably since Stuani's against Brighton, I would suggest.
Yeah.
I mean, biggest goal, I mean, it was, and the funny thing was, the goal he scored, I think, was harder than the opportunity he missed before that, a good 15 minutes earlier, wasn't it?
Yeah, he had that shot, and I did think it lacked the power, and obviously it was easy in the end for Rafael Cabral. But like I said, like I said earlier, that win was vital, but obviously against Bristol City, it was the complete opposite, and where we didn't manage and even a single shot on goal until eventually Britt Sombalonga got the early consolation in the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, another player that's coming for a bit of criticism, and again, his contract's up at the end of this season, is Marvin Johnson. What have you made of his performances since the restart, Joe? Because in some senses, it's been strange to see him play at left back, but he's often put in some of the best deliveries into the box for us in games, hasn't he?
Yeah, it's been a mixed bag recently as Johnson. I think from the start of the season, he was arguably one of our best players coming up, but since after the lockdown period, there's been some performances where he wasn't quite up to par with particularly his marking in the box at certain times, and obviously giving silly fouls away, and zone marking, etc. But I think Warnock sees something in him which he doesn't in Hayden Coulson, which I find somewhat a bit odd. But it's at the end of the day, it's Warnock's team to pick, and obviously he sees Johnson as a better fit in that role than Hayden Coulson. Yeah,
no, that's a fair point, Joe. I mean, another player that hasn't figured much since the restart is Lewis Wing. And Matty Johnson's just asked here tonight, why isn't Lewis Wing getting a look in? He believes that Warnock loved him before he arrived, but he's not featured a great deal, has he, in recent games? Can you think why that is, Joe?
I don't know. I think around the central midfield pairing, I think he prefers like Saville, Howson and McNair, obviously more to what Wing does, because I think he once described Paddy McNair as the player that every manager wants to have in his team. So I think McNair is obviously getting the more looking, and I think what Lewis Wing is, which I find, if you want to be an attack-minded team, and obviously McNair's more of a defensive midfield player, I think, obviously that's going to be a bit difficult to take in. But I feel sad a little bit for Lewis Wing, because I think he deserves a more decent run in the team that I think obviously the likes of Saville usually gets. But it's difficult, for players like Lewis at this stage, which obviously there's obviously some players at the team that Warnock would prefer to have played rather than him, to be honest.
Yeah, I just think in recent games he's gone for two in midfield, which have been Howson and Saville, and I think he's maybe thought if any position Wing was going to take, it might have been either Tavs or playing behind a front man, and I just don't think. I think Wing's a little bit out of form at the moment, and he's struggling to merit a place, I think, in the starting 11. But we'll see what happens on Wednesday, because obviously there's going to have to be changes with Howson's suspension, which we'll get onto further on in the show. But I think again Wing will be on the bench in midweek. I think no doubt about that. I mean, Paul Nichols has said here that this is the worst season since 85-86. I wouldn't dispute that, Paul. I think this season's been very, very reminiscent of the mid-80s seasons. It's not been the greatest, and I think it'll be a relief to most Borough fans when it is finished on Wednesday night, and hopefully we're still in the Championship. And if we are in the Championship, don't forget to look out for the EFL Championship banter page on Facebook. Hopefully, like I say, we'll be one of those 24 teams that are in the Championship next season. But I think now you can't even underestimate the importance of that win at Reading last week. Those extra 2 points, even a draw, wouldn't have been good enough if you look back on it now. And it illustrates, I think, as well, Joe, by the celebrations at the final whistle amongst the players.
Yeah, you can tell, and obviously from George Saville's reaction, and obviously when Patrick Roberts' goal came in, obviously you saw how important it was. But you look at these next games now, where you could have, where when a point or a win could be enough to secure a safety in the the teams that are currently around us. We obviously know that Stoke and Huddersfield, I think, are currently mathematically safe. So I think there's only a few teams left that can obviously might end up in the bottom three. So again, the win over Reading was vital, and I think going into the last game, I think either a win or draw will probably do it.
Yeah, I think we only need a point, don't we? And even then, there's so many different conundrums going around with obviously the Wigan situation. If they get the 12 points taken off them, then we are already safe. But that's not been rubber stamped yet. There's talk of Sheffield Wednesday being docked points, which could drop them into the bottom three. So it's just all up in the air. I don't think I've ever known such a bizarre ending to a season in a league where there's so many things could happen. And even after Wednesday's game, I don't think it'll be all sorted out, will it?
I think I've heard. I think I've read in the Gazette today. We'll probably find out the fate of Wigan by next Tuesday. But Neil Warnock has obviously said he wanted to have it done, obviously before we play the game on Wednesday, which I find a little bit odd. But you know that with the EFL these days, you know, they just want to leave decisions until the end of the season, really.
Yeah, I'm with Pete Robbo there. The Wigan situation, I think, I really feel for them. I do, and I think it's awful. And for me, the problem lies with the EFL. If they've said someone's fit to take over, and then within a month the club's gone into administration, well, then they've not really done their due diligence properly. I don't think the EFL, but I think once you've got rules in place which say that administration happens, if you go into administration, you lose 12 points. I don't really see now how they can go back on that. And again, this should have been all sorted out before the final match of the season. It can't then run on to after Wednesday for me, because I just think that creates a farcical situation where you'll have clubs that may not be in the bottom three, then end up in the bottom three. And I think this season could end up being played out in the courts, couldn't it?
Yeah. And we all kind of feel sorry for Wigan in a way. Obviously, you know, we've all been there before. We obviously know what it feels like to be in administration. I personally been to Wigan myself, you know, last year. You know, they had great people. It was a great stadium, you know, great vibes. Obviously, it's a shame to see where they are, but obviously we hopefully they'll get the buyers in. But obviously, we've got to look at it that, you know, obviously we are fighting for survival in the league, but hopefully, you know, Wigan will have it all sorted then. But in the meantime, it's difficult to say, you know, because obviously, you know, Macclesfield are still waiting to learn their fate along with Stevenage, along with the relegation from League Two. So
yeah,
I don't know what the EFL are thinking, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm with David Jackson as well on this. It's embarrassing when you have to rely on teams losing points for us to survive, and it is really this should have been sorted out from Borough's point of view. I mean, it's just been a nightmare season, which I think we'll be all glad to see the back of come Wednesday night. And it is unfortunate that we may have to rely on somebody getting a point deduction to keep us up, but I think that's just been the sorry situation of our season, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think you know, I think in Sheffield Wednesday's case, I think it's over the sale of the ground. I think in it,
it's all like financial fair play along with Derby and yeah. So again, that could. I know Birmingham got 9 points deducted last year. So whether the likes of Sheffield Wednesday and Derby get deducted 9 points or more, we just don't know yet. But again, that's been in the pipeline since before Christmas. So again, I can't understand why it's taken them till still July and not reached a decision. But there you go. That's the people in charge of football at the moment. Going back to the Borough, Joe. Unfortunately, on Saturday, as has so often been the case recently, we get a good result and we can't back it up at the Riverside. That's no home wins in 10 games going back to Boxing Day now. Can you explain why that's the case, Joe?
It's difficult to call. It's really difficult to call. I don't think, you know, we were just left to rue our bad luck at home, you know, ever since the restart from the lockdown. Obviously, Swansea was one example, which a case where we didn't have the fans in the ground, which obviously we were missing. And it was around that time when it cost Jonathan Woodgate his job. But, you know, like I say, you know, that's what Chris Sykes has just said there, only 6 wins at home this season, which it's not good enough. It's not good enough, you know. We obviously like to consider the Riverside as a fortress, but this season, obviously, obviously it's very different. We're just with those 6 wins at the Riverside. It's been a very bleak season for me, to be honest. Obviously, I think I marked that down as the worst season for me as a Borough fan. Probably since the 08-09 season when we got relegated from the Premier League. So
yeah,
next season I think changes will have to improve. Obviously, to make the Riverside a fortress again.
Yeah. No, like you say, at the end of the day, Joe, that's where the vast majority of your fans will see your team at home, and to get 6 home wins all season, not winning 10, and traditionally the Borough are a strong home team, and it's certainly not been the case this year. And it's when it's difficult enough to encourage fans in these financial times to go and spend the money on a season ticket or go and watch games with the walk-up prices at the Riverside, home form like that's not going to encourage more people to go back and watch them, is it?
No, it's definitely not, and especially the regarding of ticket sales as well. Obviously, charging people like £32 to get in the game, and obviously away fans will probably feel the same brunt of it, of us charging them about 32 quid to get in at the Riverside.
Yeah.
But like I say, we're all miss being at the grounds, but so hopefully a matter of time before we're all back in there. But yeah, it's hopefully be a matter of time, we actually are back at the Riverside.
Yeah. Paul Nichols has said he's actually hoping that Wigan stay up. In terms of the Borough, it's sad how far back we've gone in 4 years from celebrating promotion to the Premier League to now relying on a Wigan points deduction. It's an absolute shambles. And I think there's a lot of Borough fans I know watching the game on Saturday, and I'm sure you were, Joe, and you see Steve Gibson sat there in the director's box, and not far away is Neil Bowser, and you're thinking, what must be going through their mind? I mean, that side has been put together through signings that have come through Neil Bowser's watch in the last couple of years. And we get such performances like that, and you're going through managers at a rapid rate recently, yet the players that have been brought in on good money, good salaries, putting in performances like this week after week. I mean, what's going on there? I mean, it's just not good enough, is it? It is a shambles.
It is from the recruitment side of things. Obviously, the fans on social media have been complaining about the recruitment, obviously, for the last couple of seasons. But I think, obviously, there was one rumour going about the parachute money, when there was rumoured about Gary Monk mostly spent all of that parachute money on the likes of Britta Sombalonga and Johnny Howson and Ashley Fletcher, etc. So I think, to put into perspective, I think us spending out most of our parachute money on big money players, I think, has obviously left us in a position now where we have to rely now on loans and free transfers and etc. Which I think, for a club like us, you expect us to spend money on quality players, but obviously throughout the last 2 seasons or so, we haven't done that. So it is worrying in terms of recruitment, basically. So it's something we have to look at in the future and think, how do we improve that?
Yeah, I think Paul's alluded to a little bit of what you said there, Joe, about where does the money come from to bring in new players. Well, obviously, there's players that have left now on the wage bill that have gone in recent weeks. Gusted, Shotton. There's obviously possibly George Friend. It looks like it's the end of his time. Possibly Adam Clayton. Again, Marvin Johnson hasn't been up with a contract. So there'll be a big saving on the wage bill there. And do you think there's any players that maybe Neil Warnock or whoever comes in as manager next might say, do you know what, could potentially cash on them and bring a little bit more money in to boost to the transfer kitty for next season?
They probably have to, considering you're going to have most of the majority of our squad that leaving, and looking at the fact that we only use like less subs than we have in other championship clubs in our last game. I mean, if Gibson's obviously willing to give the funds to Warnock to bring in players, he'll have to take that gamble. I'm not going to lie, he has to take that gamble because we do need players, obviously, for the next season. Obviously, if most of our players are going to be taken off our wage bill, and most likely we get released on frees.
Yeah, I think Chris Manders there, just to follow up, has said there's going to be big changes. He thinks there's some if we stay up. And you can see Gibbo back in Warnock in the transfer market like Karanka wasn't having a good go at the league. And that's the other rumour that's possibly going around at the moment with regards to financial fair play, that it may be relaxed next season due to the situation with the pandemic, that they may relax financial fair play and its restrictions, so clubs can spend a little bit more if they wish to than what they normally would, which I think is what's holding Steve Gibson back, and especially in a way as he's been such an advocate of other clubs following the rules. If it is relaxed a little bit, you could possibly see him providing more money for the next manager to spend, because I think whatever, I know we were on the show last week and with Guesty saying about there's going to have to be a major overhaul of this squad next season, because it's pretty much down to the bare bones as it is. But what we've got, I don't think it's good enough to sustain us in the Championship, and certainly not to push towards the top half of the table, is it, Joe?
No, definitely not. Not considering the form we actually been in this season, and obviously there's a couple of players who do want to leave the club for pastures new. We do need a major overhaul, and we do need it fast. Considering the fact, if we are going to be in League One next season, which obviously we don't want, obviously, because that will still affect us financial wise as well. If you looked at other clubs in the past, obviously Bolton is one of them, but we need players and we need them fast. So we're going to think fast of how we can get those players if they're going to challenge in the Championship next season, or possibly challenge to get back up in League One. So we'll have to see what happens come the end of the season. Yeah,
I mean, another unwanted factor in this season, Joe, is the amount of early goals we've conceded. I mean, it makes things hard enough as it is, because I think with the lowest goal scorers in the division, it doesn't help if you're letting in goals in the first 5 minutes. And I mean, again, all 3 goals on Saturday were just like disastrous goals to let in, where just shooting yourself in the foot.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, the bad zonal marking is obviously our downfall, and also us conceding from set pieces has been a big problem this season. And obviously the defensive frailties at the back, but it's one of probably the defense is probably going to be one of the main key areas that we're going to need to work on building, from the start of next season, I think.
Yeah. Like you say, it doesn't help conceding those goals, and like the ones we saw at the weekend, Joe. But it also concerns me. It's something we've spoke about throughout the season, not just in recent weeks. The lack of pace, lack of creativity. And I think what's also become apparent to me in recent weeks is that we lack, like Neil Warnock said, mental strength, but a nastiness in our team. There's nobody in our team that I really think is going to upset the opposition and get into them. And we've got none of that at all at our team. And I just think at the minute, we're a bit of a soft touch. And anyone that's got a little bit about them can bully us in games. And that happened again at the weekend, didn't it?
Yeah, we're also lacking a killer instinct in front of goal. I think that's been our other main problem as well, this season. There was times in this season when obviously the likes of Son, Malonga and Fletcher can have shots on goal, but they're just lacking that last vital touch that was needed. And then the players that can have a goal, obviously, like Wing, Tavernier, and quite possibly Howson as well, can take the shot, and obviously they can't come off, And when we brought in the Mecha in January, there's a couple of times as well where you can think that just take a shot, and most of the time he just tries to walk it in. I think it's just a killer instinct. We've been lacking James, to be honest.
I think you're right there, Joe. I think there's definitely that. Yeah. There's a lot of work needed in terms of, we've got no hope of going up in the Championship. You're only scoring 45, 46 goals in a season, without a doubt. That's just not going to happen at all. I mean, a lot of players are getting criticised for the performances at the weekend, and I don't want to single anybody out. I think it was interesting after the game that Neil Warnock made a comment, and one or two people have picked up on it, that he said he didn't want the players to know before the game the Wigan score. But he said apparently they found out, they knew that Wigan had drawn with Charlton, almost implying as though, well, we're safe now, and it would then affect how they perform. Now, that shouldn't be the case. Whether you're safe, you've got nothing to play for. At the end of the day, you're playing for the badge on the shirt. Whether you're in 20th position, 13th position, or top of the league, you should be going out there to win every game. But that rang alarm bells with me, that Neil Warnock's saying, I didn't want them to know the Wigan scores or it would affect the performance. What did you make of that, Joe?
It exactly your point. You know, you don't when you're at the point this point in the season, you don't want to really, you know what the other team's scores are going to be. I think Neil Warnock's trying to imply that you've got a game to play, but play for the shirt. Don't rely on other clubs. But you got to. But I think most clubs will obviously realise, you know, there is frailties, you know, in that games, you know, considering we just can't rely on other teams to get the results for us, but because we have to focus on playing for not only for the share but also the pride in our place in the league. So, in my opinion, I think, you know, if you can rely, you know, on other teams, then we'll have to do that. But when you go into games like that, you don't really want to rely on other teams of getting a result for you and relying on them to keep you in the league. You've got to do that yourself, and I think that's what Neil Warnock's trying to input in the team.
Yeah. I mean, one of the players, well, we'll have to mention because of the incident that happened at the end of the game, who's had a fantastic season for us and has arguably been our best player over the last 18 months is Johnny Howson. But for the life of me, and I mean, he's a seasoned professional now, Joe, I can't work out what he was thinking of there. The game had gone, it was in injury time, with 3-1 down, and he goes and gets himself a second yellow card with a challenge which he just didn't need to make. The lad was going nowhere, and now he's got himself banned out of Wednesday's game. I mean, again, unbelievably poor decision-making again.
Yeah, it was really such a stupid decision, I think, from Howson, because I think he was one of the players that we could have been crucial for us, you know, coming up to the game on Wednesday. But obviously, we know in football tensions can boil over at the best of times, and obviously that rush of adrenaline obviously made Howson to make one stupid mistake like that, and obviously he's going to be a vital miss for the game, you know, on Wednesday. I think, from my opinion, if people were going to say who we're going to put in that position, you know, for the game on Wednesday, obviously most people will probably say obviously put Lewis Wing in there. But to be honest, I think I won't be surprised, to be honest, James. I think if Warnock probably will install Paddy McNair in that position, I think, on Wednesday.
Right. I've got a sneaky suspicion. I mean, we'll talk about the Sheff Wed game in a bit, but I think he might go to possibly 3 centre-backs again on Wednesday, which might, I know we haven't got many centre-backs left, but I think he might draft possibly Nathan Wood in, which is a big shout for a game such as it is on Wednesday. But I just think with the threat of Anthony Newey up front, and possibly you may have Jordan Rhodes up front as well with them, and I think he might just go to fall back to the 3 at the back, and then the 2 wing backs, which then might affect the dynamics in midfield, and he might bring in possibly Saville with McNair in midfield. I'm not so sure, but it wouldn't surprise me if he went that way on Wednesday. But like I say, we'll look ahead to that later on.
Yeah.
Damon LaRoche, thanks for watching. Damon, he's just said there, Warnock has said that we've lacked leadership from the back going forward and we've never produced a top-quality striker. Them times are long gone, but we're missing leaders. And a few people tonight have mentioned leaders. I've had Pete Robbo talking about Leadbitter. And leadership does seem to be an issue within the team, doesn't it, that it's lacking?
Yeah. I think most people will probably be relying on, obviously, George Friend to lead the team, but I think his confidence has been a bit low at the minute, you know, ever since the restart, since he got put in that position. I mean, obviously, there were signs of Ryan Shotton showing signs of that, obviously, from the Millwall game, but now, obviously, he's gone. You have to rely on someone else probably get put in that position. Obviously, most people will probably look to George Friend anyway, but
yeah,
it's difficult to tell, you know, who can lead the team. And I think it's sort of thing that we've been lacking, you know, ever since, you know, the restart of the season, really.
Yeah, well, just before we bring Andy Preston in, one more thing about the Reading game, Joe. It appeared after the game, there was the picture of George Friend sat on the bench in quiet reflection. What do you think was going through his mind?
Could be a lot of things, you know. Obviously, maybe the thought of aspect of us being in League One, but obviously, I think most people will probably think that he's obviously played his last game at the Riverside. And remember that scene of Andres Iniesta obviously sat for a few hours at the Camp Nou after he played his last game for Barcelona. I think that could be something similar, you know.
I bet you George Friend's never been compared to a Barcelona player before, Joe. That might be a first, that one, mate.
Probably, yeah. I'm just sort of reminiscing, the scene, obviously, sitting in the ground, obviously for a couple of hours, thinking, this is your last appearance at your place that you called home for so long. And to be fair to George, he has been a great servant for the club the last few years. And if he does go, he'll obviously be a big miss amongst the fans.
Yeah, you're right there. Yeah, if nothing else, his performances and his attitude and his community work and everything he stands for, he's been a great servant of the club, hasn't he? And that should always be remembered, I think, by Borough fans. Yeah. Right, Joe, we're going to add another guest to the show now. We've got Andy Preston joining us, the Mayor of Middlesbrough. Welcome to the Monday Night Show, Andy.
Hello, how are you doing?
We're not so bad, all things considered, being Borough fans at the minute. But yeah, it's something we get used to over the years.
Yeah.
Before we talk a bit about football and stuff, for those that don't know, can you give them an indication about what your job sort of entails and what it involves?
Yeah, so as you said, I'm the mayor. Now, some people think that means that you wear a big chain, and you go around opening garden centres and stuff, and that's not really true. That's what you call a ceremonial mayor. My job is I'm an elected mayor, so put in power directly by the public, and I suppose in truth and in simplicity, they want me to get stuff done. So if someone's unhappy with the bins or potholes or nuisance neighbours or lack of investment, shops, I get emails, Facebook messages on a Sunday afternoon about anything, literally anything and everything people aren't happy with. Obviously, what I don't do is I don't control the police, I don't control the NHS, but I get messages about that. My job is to stand up for people and fight to try and win investment, create jobs, try to make it a better town to live in, to visit, to do business in, and obviously a lot of that stuff takes time, and no one's got patience. But I haven't got much patience either, so I'm trying very hard to get stuff done fast, and my job is to make everyone's lives a bit better and make the future better than the past. I think in the last few decades we've had regular decline across the town with pockets of good stuff, but general decline, and my job is to first of all halt that and then see us start to improve. I need to stop talking because I've talked for a long time. Sorry, I talk a lot.
We've invited you on, Andy. It's no problem. We'll talk about the important stuff now, though, the football. In terms of the Borough, what are your favourite memories of the club, or favourite players, or favourite eras, stuff like that?
Good question. Right, so a few questions there, weren't there? Favourite player? Well, I first went to a match and I can't remember what it was. It was probably about 1971. My neighbour took me, called Mr. Arthur Smith, big tall fella, and I was lifted over the turnstile to get in. But I gave me some money, but we never used it. And I don't know who played. I don't remember much about it. I remember seeing a lad being escorted out by a copper with his arm twisted behind his back. And I remember people shouting, and I was a bit scared and confused. 73-4 was a season that I remember a little bit. I remember the excitement in the town, the big parades on Linthorpe Road, and the song Up the Borough. My nana knitted me a red and white woolly hat, which I kept for years and I lost recently, sadly. But the season that I remember most, that sort of crystallised that pain and pleasure, and sometimes it's quite a nice pain, it's pain, but you're kind of enjoying it, was 81-82, my last year at school. I was 15. We were relegated, and I was completely obsessed. And I remember not focusing on my school stuff, and Mr. McCullough, the head of chemistry, the chemistry teacher, saying to me, you'll learn at the end of the season that you've wasted your time focusing on the Borough and not on school. And that was a great season. I mean, it was horrible. I remember going to Notts County away. I think it might have been the only away match we won. We won 1-0. Gary McDonald, Acklem lad, scored in the second half, I think. He had a big, long, curly perm, I think. And there was about 40 Borough fans in the away. And I went down on the supporters club coach. Just one coach went. that was a bittersweet season. I remember a really nice highlight from that season was we had Brighton at home with probably about 4 games left. It was a night match. I was in the boys' end, and I think Tony McAndrews scored a penalty in the last 5 minutes to give us a win.
Yeah.
And suddenly there was a glimmer of hope for the whole season, and the whole ground came alive, and everyone was singing "Staying Up, Staying Up." And I've got hairs on the back of my neck now talking about it, like seriously, really. And that was magical. It wasn't to be.
Yeah.
That was a big season.
I mean,
I think best player. I mean, I don't know why, but Stephen Bell springs to mind. He definitely wasn't our best ever player, but he definitely was the local lad, wasn't he? I think he was from Thorntree. He was 16 in '82, I think, when he got his first game, the first team. And then flashes of brilliance, a tiny little skinny boy, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
You probably don't remember him. You're probably too young.
I saw him.
And that was special to me. Because he was a local lad, wasn't he? That was really special to me.
Yeah.
But the best player in my life, for various reasons, has to be Janino. It reset our expectations. Suddenly, anything felt possible. Our wildest dreams had come true. I'd never heard of him, but I knew how immediately how impactful he was, how he changed the world's perceptions of us as a club. Kids around the world knew who Middlesbrough was and where it was, and it was just suddenly we were going to take on the world. It felt like anything was possible, and I'm so grateful to Steve Gibson, Keith Lamb, and everyone who made those years amazing. Because did we get that much out of it? Well, we got some things out of it, but we had hope, didn't we? We had confidence, we had belief, and so much so that at the end, it started to feel normal that we would sign the best player in the world. It started to feel normal that we would have people like an Emerson.
Yeah.
And
I mean, Andy, what do you think now? Just going to say now, I mean, obviously you've spoke about some great days and some dark days following the Borough. In terms of to the town itself, what difference would it make if next season Middlesbrough were, say, in the Championship or in League One? What sort of difference would that make to the town?
I think sort of there are three answers to that. I sound like a politician, don't I? There are 3 answers to that. The first one is it makes a small, significant and immediate difference to things like the higher you are up in the league, you get more home support. So your pubs, restaurants, clubs get busier on a Saturday. That's good. But you also get more visiting fans coming up, which is you bringing people and showcasing your town. They bring a bit of money. Hotels are busy. That's really good. That'll take off. I think secondly, when you do well, when your club's doing well, people have a little bit of a spring in the step. If you win a cup game, if you get promoted, there's a feel-good factor. I think that's quite short-lived, but I think that's good news. Truthfully, though, and I get asked this a lot, I don't think it makes a lot of difference long-term. And if you look at Leeds as a city which is really prospered, I mean, you know, it's changed leaps and bounds. It's come on leaps and bounds over 20 years, become a financial centre. Everybody wants to live in the centre and visit. That progress largely coincided with the club's low point, as you know, when they got down to the old 3rd tier. I don't know what it was called back then, but so Leeds' progress as a city actually coincided with the football club's suffering. So I don't think there's evidence of a really strong link between long-term performance of your town or city and the performance of the town or football club. But there's definitely a feel-good factor that can help in the short term. I know when Sunderland won the FA Cup in '73, was it? They had their economy had a big bounce short term. You know, everybody's going out and booking holidays and spending in the shops. Yeah. And then they're sober up and regret it. But I think long term, it doesn't make a lot of difference.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned there about Stephen Bell, a local lad that played for the Borough, and we've had a lot. Obviously, the class of '86 was a lot of local players, and Borough fans, I do think, take a lot of pride in local players coming through, making it in the first team. But it's also about ensuring that facilities are in place at the very start, so those players can begin their careers. So, and having access to the sport. Are you able, as a mayor of Middlesbrough, to provide those things for people in this area?
Yeah, I think we can. Yes, it's tough. It is tough. I think that facilities are one thing. The next thing is getting the kids to go out and use them, and not just the kids with engaged parents. The kids whose parents are keen and push them to do well. Those kids will always do well. It's the kids who get left behind we need to worry about. And in the old days, I do sound like an old man, but in the old days, kids were playing in the street, playing in the park, playing by the beck, wherever there's a bit of grass. There was some lads out, sometimes lasses, but mainly lads with a football. And it's a cliche, but it's true. Literally, some jumpers, right? That's what you did. That's what we all did. And I think, I wouldn't say those days have gone, but they're on the way to disappearing. And I think whether it's there are other things now to do with your time, we need to find a way of inspiring those kids. And facilities are definitely important, but we need to get kids, and I fight it with my kids, off the sofas, off the Xbox, on the bikes to see their mates, in the park or on the beck playing football, whatever it is, out kicking a ball, throwing a ball, jumping off something. And doing that is tough. It is tough, to be honest. And you can build brilliant facilities, and that will help. But it's still not going to catch most of these kids. There's a culture change that's gone on. I'm sorry, I'm not giving you a simple answer because it's not simple. It isn't as simple as building a sports centre. Yeah. Because what will typically happen is it's the kids with the parents who will push them that go. And we need to catch all the kids. So somehow we need the role models. We need to make it exciting. We need to find a way of incentivising them. And obviously we can work with the club, and as a council we work closely with MFC Foundation because people attach themselves to the football club. But I wish I'd give you a simple answer that if we spend £1 million, we fix it. But it's not as simple as that, I'm afraid. I'm sorry. No. It's not a good answer, is it?
No, you've been true. Yeah. No, Andy, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for coming on tonight.
Is that it? You're kicking me off?
We're getting exit stage left, mate. Do you think, before we go, do you think the Borough will stay up though?
I'm a one for numbers. I failed my O-level maths, but I am one for numbers. I'm quite good at arithmetic, and I'm interested in probabilities and the odds and things. And I think it's almost certain that we will stay up because we need. I think Birmingham we would need to lose, and Birmingham would have to draw, and then we would need Charlton and Luton to both win. Yeah. The probability of all those things happening is very low. It doesn't mean it won't happen, but it's probably like 2 or 3%. So I would say we are almost certain to stay up.
Fingers crossed. To be fair in our favour, I can't see Charlton getting anything past Leeds.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you never know, but you're right. It's very hard to see that, isn't it? Last game of the season often throws up some shocks, doesn't it? Sometimes a team that's done well and won promotion or the champions, sometimes they seem to coast a bit. But listen, who knows? Who knows? But I think it's extraordinarily unlikely. It's possible, but very unlikely that the 4 things needed all happen and we get relegated.
Yeah. Andy, thanks for your time tonight. Really appreciate you coming on the show, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Take care,
Cheers,
mate.
Thank you very much.
All right, Joe. So we're going to finish off very, very quickly, just talking about the Sheffield game. Obviously, as Andy said there, and we've spoke about, safety's not guaranteed yet. And make no bones about it, just the Sheffield game alone, with all the subplots and the personalities involved, I don't think the blue half of the Steel City would take any sort of, or wouldn't be upset, or would be upset to send us down, would they? Because I think there's a few people there that'd be quite happy to send the Borough into League One, wouldn't they?
Yeah, to be fair, there's quite a few. Obviously, there's a lot of circumstances around the game at the moment. Obviously, with other teams going around, etc. I mean, obviously, Leeds will need to keep Charlton at bay, which obviously might be the easier option if the worst case scenario does come for us. And then Birmingham obviously will have to keep at bay. I'm not sure who they're playing, James. I think you've got a good idea who Birmingham playing more than I do.
Derby.
Oh, Derby. I think if Derby obviously can recover from that Leeds defeat, I think Derby will probably keep them at bay. And obviously we'll have to rely on our old friend Mugger to keep Luton at bay.
Yeah. I mean, just looking at our game, it is going to be tough. We're down to the bare bones in terms of players we've got. Obviously, the defence is struggling. And the game at the Riverside, when we played Sheffield Wednesday early in the season, doesn't fill you with a great deal of confidence either. But it is just a point we need to guarantee survival. Can you see us getting that point, Joe?
Well, after seeing, obviously, Chef Wed obviously getting beat, I think it was 5-3 by Fulham this past weekend.
Yeah, 5-3 at Fulham, yeah.
They're a side that, they do concede goals every now and then. So I'm hopeful, and I've got my fingers crossed as well. I think, a win or draw, then obviously we'll be playing in the Sky Bet Championship next season. So hopefully, probably with Leeds and Blackburn and Derby doing a little favour as well. Yeah. I think a win or draw will do it, James. I think my mind's set on a draw, but I'm just hoping for a win.
Yeah, draw will be enough. Pete Robbo thinks we'll win 2-0. There's a few people here remembering we've had some bad experiences at Sheffield Wednesday before. We got relegated, as Craig Hutchie said there, in '89. And then we also, I think we went down there in '93 again, which Pete Nichols has mentioned there, although we won that day. But it's not going to be easy, and it may well be that we already have enough points in the bank, but we'll wait and see, and we'll no doubt be together next week for our end of season show, where we'll hopefully it's not a post-mortem, mate, and we're looking forward to a bright future for the club. But Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on tonight, mate. Thanks very much for coming on the show. Thanks again to Andy Preston for joining us. And Borough fans, thank you so much again for all your contributions to the show. Much appreciated as always. Win, lose or draw, you're always on, letting us know how you feel. Don't forget to keep up to date with things this week. Crucial week for the club. Joe's got his preview. I think it'll be out before the game on Wednesday.
It'll be out tomorrow.
Good man, so there's that, and all the latest goings on at the club. They'll be on our site. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to Borough Fan TV. And as I said, join us next Monday night. There'll be myself, Joe, Guesty, there may be one or two others on as well, where we're going to do our review of the season. Like I say, hopefully we're still in the Championship by then, Borough fans. Until then, from myself, Joe, and Joe Scott, from me, James Hutchinson, thanks again. Red and White, you and me, Monday at 6, Borough Fan TV, up the Borough.
Up the Borough.